In the 21st century, manufacturing has evolved with the introduction of robots. Robots have assisted on the assembly line of manufacturing plants to increase efficiency and reduce human error. With the addition of automation, companies can perform repetitive tasks with high precision, accuracy, and speed. Robots can communicate with each other for smooth transitions of the product between stations in the assembly line. However, automation comes with challenges like control and product recognition for the robot to complete tasks. The students of Penn State's ME435 took a small step in automation with the Dobot Magician. Over the course of a few weeks, we performed multiple tasks in the lab to learn about how to control the magician and identify objects. Looking at Lab 1, our team learned several things. Our team learned how the Dobot Magician operated. This included how the Dobot moved in space and the key variables associated with the movement. We learned where the Dobot pivoted, how each segment moved relative to the other, and the movement limits the Dobot has. As a team, we took a deep dive into how the Dobot operates and what makes it move. It was after this we programmed the Dobot to do a simple task of picking up an object and moving it to another location. Using the suction cup attachment, we were able to make this movement happen. This lab was not a test of our ability to problem solve, but rather an explanation of a machine we were to use extensively in the future. Moving on to Lab 2, our team went more into depth with the Dobot. This time, we completed several tasks to become more familiar with the Dobot. This lab was still following directions to create a working system. This further increased our knowledge of the Dobot and the potential functions we could use for our final project. The lab began with using an infrared sensor and a conveyor belt to pick up blocks and move them off the belt. This task placed an emphasis on the input-output switch communication and branch logic to make this task happen. This was another simple task with an introduction to another important function. Furthermore, in Lab 2, our team learned about image acquisition and processing. Using the built-in functions, our team programmed the Dobot to take an image and save it for post-processing. With an image saved in the file where the Dobot could retrieve it, several functions were performed. The saved image was uploaded where it was used to search for targets with similar coordinates. Highlighting the component in the saved image allowed for the Dobot to search for components like the highlighted part in the image. Many items can be changed with image processing, such as pixel format, which allows the Dobot to look for color or not. Following the image acquisition, the Dobot was programmed with the match command. The command gave the Dobot the needed information to match shapes when placed under a camera. This lab allowed our team to learn how to analyze an image and move components to another place based on saved data.
The last major component of this lab was calibrating the Dobot. Important task of making sure the Dobot could use data retrieved from the image and place a component in another spot appropriately. Calibrating the Dobot was something the team learned and used every time we began using the Dobot. The calibration allowed the Dobot to understand the locations of each item. Using a calibrated robot, our team used the color extract and blob commands to pick out only certain colors of cubes. Setting a specific RGB limit to the color extract, the robot could sort what blocks needed to be picked up. Lab 3 introduced two very important topics to our team: communication between robots and moving recognized items. The first task of Lab 3 taught us how to connect two different Dobot magicians and have them work together. With the addition of the I/O output and I/O input functions, the robots could then send and receive commands. With the connection through a breadboard, one robot would perform its task and then communicate to the second robot that it finished. A signal is then sent to the second robot to begin its task. This is visualized with the lighting up of the LED. Task 2 built on item recognition from Lab 2 and taught our team how to pick up specific items and place the items into the necessary locations. In Lab 2, we learned how to make models. Now, we build a model for the object we want to pick up, and then a second model for the location it needs to go. Our team was able to use fast match and calibrate transform commands to find the objects and the placement locations. This task also introduced the shell module command. This command identifies the orientation of the object relative to its initial model alignment. Then, it can determine how much the object needs to be rotated to fit into the placement location. This was used with a calibrate transform and movement point commands so that the magician was able to pick up the object and then move it into the placement location. In this task, our team learned the value of a proper calibration because without it, the robot would not be able to find exactly where the object is and it couldn't pick it up. However, Because our team was able to get a proper calibration, we could get all the objects into their locations. With the completion of all the labs, our team was able to put together all our knowledge and work with another group to sort letters and spell words. This final task involved two parts: the sending side, which required the robot to deliver the correct letters to the other team, and the receiving side, which then takes those letters and places them into the correct slots. For sending the letters to the other team, Lab 2 prepared us the most. Because the other team used blue letters, we were able to use a color extract and blob command to find the blue letters. Since there were 3 letters to deliver, we needed to make sure our code could iterate the color extract 3 times. With red letters also in the image, it was necessary to adjust the RGB limits of the color extract till only blue letters could be found. After adjusting the parameters, the robot could then recognize all the letters that the other team needed. Using a calibrate, transform, suction, and move point commands, our team was able to pick up these letters and deliver them to the other team. Once again, we found it was necessary to have a proper calibration because without it, we could not pick up the letters. After all 3 of the letters were then sent to the other team, we made sure our robot got out of the way before sending the signal to ensure robots did not crash into each other. Finally, we were able to send a signal over to the other team. When sending over the items, our team learned about keeping it simple, because robots are very good at identification if they know what they're looking for. Because color was the most obvious difference between the correct letters and the wrong letters, we used color to find which ones were the correct ones. While we could have used additional models to find the letters, we found it was simpler to use color because it was the most obvious factor. On the other side of the final task, our team also developed code for receiving letters and placing them in the corresponding locations. The branch command allowed our robot to remain dormant until the other team sent the signal. Then our robot was able to begin its task. This challenge required the development of models for the letters and the placement locations. The development of these models were the most important part because robots are very good at finding objects only once they know what they're looking for. The models needed to be perfect, therefore they needed to have perfect vertical placement with no light distortion. If these models were taken with a different gain that the camera used, then the robot would not be able to find the letters. All the environmental conditions of the models must be the same as the conditions when the robot is operating. If the gain was too low when the model was made, then the robot couldn't find it when it was trying to look for the letters. Once again, the models were made and a fast match and calibrate transform commands were used to locate the letters and the placement locations. Since the letters were placed at random orientations, shell module commands were necessary to make sure the letters could be rotated into the orientation of the placement locations. Move points and suction commands were finally used to move the letters. These models, and as well as a calibrated robot, allowed the magician to place all the letters perfectly into the designated locations. This task taught our team that robots are dumb but smart machines. They are able to sort, orient, and place objects into designated locations based off of pre-existing photos. However, the robots are also dumb because if the model is not perfectly match what the robot is seeing, then the robot cannot complete its task. With the final task completed, our team was able to get a small glimpse into robotics. Automation can perform simple tasks over and over again at high precision and efficiency. However, these labs also demonstrated the difficulties of automation. Robots need to be taught what to look for, and calibrations need to be made to allow the robot to reach the locations that they intend to go to. All the conditions need to be constant to not confuse the robot. Humans account for all these factors on their own, but robots need constant patterns to follow and struggle with imperfections. While we only touched on the surface of automation, these labs taught us how robots can communicate, see objects, and move items. Our labs taught us about the real-world challenges that manufacturers solve.